and welcome back to the Tied Sew Along. This is day 3, so you should have your front bodice and your back bodice done, and they should be attached to the shoulder seams. And today we're going to be working on adding those sleeves. We're going to be working on adding the back band with the elastic if you're doing the elastic version, and we're going to sew up our side seams so that our bodice will be totally done by the end of today. So let's get started. Okay, so for today, the things that you will need are your sleeve pieces, your back band piece, and your piece of elastic if you are doing that option. So we are going to start with these sleeves. And the first thing we have to do is sew our gathering stitches at the top of the sleeve. So we have our gathering stitch mark right here, and we are going to take our friction pen and transfer those markings onto our pattern pieces. Now we're going to take one of our sleeves and we're going to sew a gathering stitch from one marking up and around all the way to the next marking. Okay, so in order to sew a gathering stitch, we need to turn our stitch length up to, I like to do on 4. And then we are going to do one gathering stitch that is like an eighth of an inch away from the edge, and then another one that's about 1/2 inch away from the edge. There we go. So we're not doing any back stitching. We're just doing a nice long, we're just doing a nice long stitch from one edge, from one marking to the other. I have 2 different thread colors here so that I know which one is my bobbin thread and I can easily find it when it's time to gather them. Okay, so we've done our 1/8 inch seam allowance gathering stitch. Now we're going to do 1/2 inch. Okay, so that's what that looks like now. You can see, maybe in this lighter section here, you can see that I have 2 gathering stitches there, and I'm going to gather the fabric at the same time. So I'm going to turn it over to the wrong side and grab the 2 bobbin threads when it's time to gather. I'm not going to do it right now, but I'm just showing you how it's really easy for me to find the bobbin threads because they're a different color than my top threads. Okay, so we're going to do that exact same thing with the other sleeve. And there we have it. I have now finished sewing my gathering stitches for my sleeves. So the next thing we need to do is put the sleeves on our bodice. So I'm going to open up my bodice like this. I can see that the shoulder seam is the middle of my sleeve. So I'm going to fold my sleeve in half with wrong sides together, like this. I'm going to find the middle at the top here, and I'm going to line that up with my shoulder seams on my dress bodice. I'm going to make sure that the seam allowances from the shoulder seams are the way that I want them to be. Okay, line up that middle section. I'm going to go ahead and pin that there, right in the middle. Okay, so if I fold that out, you can see that the middle of my sleeve is now pinned to the middle of my arm sky. And then I'm going to take the edge of my arm sky here and I'm going to match it up to the bottom of my arm sky here. I'll pin that in place. And then I'm going to continue pinning up the sleeve all the way until I get to just before the gathering stitches. Okay, so I've pinned until I got to the gathering stitches that I made. Now I'm going to go to the other side of the sleeve and do the same thing. So I'm lining up the bottom of my sleeve with the bottom of the arm sky. Pin that in place and pin up to my gathering stitches. Making sure all 3 layers are lined up. There we go. Okay, so now I have most of my sleeve pinned onto my arm sky. I am going to take my bobbin threads and I'm going to gather until this bit of the sleeve fits the arm sky. So I'm pulling on my bobbin threads and I'm gently just pushing the fabric along those threads. So it will look like this. We're doing that all the way along until the sleeve fits the arm sky on the one side. Okay, I like to massage my gathers a little bit just so they lay nicely. And then I will pin those in place. Okay, so that's half the sleeve there. Now we're going to do the same for this part here. when you're done, it will look something like this. Then when we sew it on, we're going to use the sewing machine before we use our serger to make sure we have the right seam allowance. So I like to sew the 3/8 inch seam allowance. It'll hit in between, somewhere in between our two gathering stitches, all the way along to the other side. Then when you're done using your sewing machine to make that stitch, we're going to switch to the serger. So when I use my sewing machine, I like to use a 2, a stitch length of 2, and that's what I use for all my construction. So if it's a seam that's going to be holding pieces together, I always use a 2. Okay, now once you have serged that inside sleeve seam, you can see that there are stitches that are still visible on the outside of the sleeve. And you might be thinking, oh, it's such a pain, I'm gonna have to, painstakingly use my seam ripper to get that out, but there's actually a really easy way to do that, so I'm gonna show you what that is. So we're gonna flip it over to the wrong side, and for the stitch that's showing here, we find the bobbin thread, and just like we did before to gather, we pull that bobbin thread until it comes right out, and you can see I've just easily pulled that thread right out. Then we can flip it back to the right side, and this seam that was so visible just comes right off. And you can steam that if there's holes in yours, but it just comes out so beautifully. Okay, so there we have it. We've got one sleeve on, and we're going to do that exact same thing with the other sleeve. Okay, so now we have both of our sleeves on our bodice, and I'm going to show you how I like to hem the sleeves. So the first thing I like to do when I have sleeves that need to be hemmed is I like to finish the bottom edge of my sleeves. So I'm going to run it through my serger. It's totally optional, you do not have to do this at all. I just like the clean finish that it gives my sleeves when the dress is all put together. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. You can use a little zigzag on the edge if you want, but again, this is totally optional. So I'm going to run these through my serger. Okay, so I've just finished those bottom edges of my sleeves, and I'm going to take it over to my iron, and I'm going to press it up for the hem. I'm not going to sew the hem yet, I'm just going to press it. And for this dress, we are going to hem it 1/2 inch. So we're going to press this edge up 1/2 inch in preparation of hemming our sleeve once our bodice is totally finished. I've now pressed up my sleeves. I know it's hard to tell, but there is a crease there. So I have pressed it up like this. It's flipping out because good quality cotton lycra always rolls to the right side. So when heat is applied or when you stretch it, it'll always roll to the right side. But just having that crease there is going to help you so much when you go to hem your sleeves later. So there you go. The next thing we need to do is the back band. So we're going to take our back band. Let's set this aside for a minute. We're going to take our back bodice band, and we are going to fold it wrong sides together like this, and we're going to give that a press. Okay, so we're just folding it wrong sides together, and we're going to press it. Now I have my back bodice band folded in half, wrong sides together, and pressed. And the next thing we're going to do is sew a casing for our elastic, if you are using the elastic version. That is 5/8 of an inch down from the folded side. Okay, so if you see here, this is my folded side. I'm going to sew 5/8 of an inch down from the folded side, all the way along the length of the band. And there you have it. I have a 5/8 inch casing there from the top, from the fold. It's having a little trouble focusing. But there you go. So now we're going to put our elastic through our casing. So I have a safety pin here. This is the way that I like to do it. I like to find a safety pin that's about the same width as the elastic that I'm using. And I pin it to the end of my elastic. And then using the safety pin, I lead the elastic through the casing. And I kind of push the fabric and bunch it up on my safety pin, and then I hold the top of the safety pin and pull the fabric down along my elastic. And do it again. And I'm going to do it just enough that the elastic reaches the edge of my casing there, and I'm going to sew along the edge there to hold the elastic in place. And I just go over it a couple times just to make sure that it stays in place. And then I continue pulling it out the other side. I'm making sure that the elastic is not twisted at all. I hold it in place with my thumb there while I take the safety pin out. And I line up that edge of the elastic with the edge of my casing again. And I tack it down just like I did the last time. And there we have it. Our elastic is ready to put on our bodice. So now that we have the elastic casing finished, we're going to attach it to our bodice. So I have my bodice laying right side up right now, and I have my elastic casing with the raw edge on the bottom and the folded edge on top. And we are not going to put this on top of the right side, we're going to put it underneath. So I'm just going to pull it down like this. I have the puckers from my elastic casing kind of centered so that these parts lay flat, and I can match them up with these parts of the bodice. So you can see that there are two flat parts of this bodice before it starts angling up, and that is where we're going to sew, we're going to use a basting stitch to sew the elastic on there. So we're going to go ahead and put that underneath those bodice pieces. And we'll pin it in place one at a time. I'm also going to baste it on the side seam right here, because the next thing we're going to do is we're going to sew up the side seams, and we want to make sure that that casing gets caught in the side seam. So I'm also going to baste it there. There we go. So I have it all pinned up now. I'm going to baste along the edge here and all the way across these side pieces here. I don't need to do it. I don't need to baste here in the center in between the angle parts here. So I'm just gonna baste down the side, down the back of the bodice, and then down this side and down the bottom of the bodice there. Alright, so there we go. We have that basted on the back of our bodice here. I basted it on the side seams and on the bottom of the bodice bits. And now we're ready to sew up the side seams. So in order to do that, we'll open our bodice, right side facing up. We will take the back or front of our bodice and fold it down over top of the other side. Then we're going to make sure that the hem that we pressed on our sleeves is open. And we're going to do that because if you have it closed when you sew up the side seams, you won't be able to adjust it once the dress is finished. And if it ends up being too long or too short of a hem, then you're going to be in trouble. So make sure that that is open. You can still see that the crease is there and it's quite obvious. And we're going to fold it right sides together. We're going to pin it up all the way along the sleeve and all the way down the side seam as well. Okay, so I've pinned all the way down my side seam over here and all the way down my arm. So I'm going to sew with my sewing machine first to make sure I have the correct seam allowance, and then I'm going to go back and finish the edge with my serger. I'm going to turn my stitch length back to a 2, and we're going to use the 3/8 inch seam allowance. And there you have it. Do the exact same to the other side. Now I have finished sewing my side seams and down the arms, and it looks like this. And we can take it and turn it right side out again. And see that we have a beautiful bodice. Okay, from this step, I would suggest trying it on whoever is going to be wearing this dress. In my case, my daughter is at school, so I don't know how far up I need to hem the sleeves. So I'm just going to leave them for now and continue on to the skirt. When I hem the skirt at the end, I will also hem the sleeves. So stay with me. For now, we're gonna put the bodice aside. Congratulations, you've finished your tied twist back bodice and it is ready to get its skirt on tomorrow. Thanks for watching and I'll see you then.